everyone.
Shalom.
Welcome to Hebrew Shebrew through the Torah portion through the lens of relationships. So let's dig in.
The parsha this week is called Vayakahal. It is Shemoth or Exodus 35 verse 1 through 38 verse 20. Vayakahal basically means and he assembled. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just kind of give us an overview of these chapters, and it kind of incorporates the next Torah portion as well. This parsha contains a great amount of repeated wisdom or information that was recorded previously in chapters 25 through 31, but it does have some bits and pieces of new information or wisdom. Chapters 25 through 31 basically is the giving of the instructions or the blueprint for the tabernacle, whereas these chapters 35 through 40, are recording the construction of these items. So we can look at the first as receiving the blueprint, and then this set of chapters is going to be following the blueprint or applying that wisdom and information that has been received. So what can we learn from just looking at this Torah portion from a bird's eye view, the expanded, overview?
Yeah.
Sometimes information is so critical that it warrants repeating.
Yeah.
Let's turn to 2 Peter chapter 1. So in 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 5 through 15, I'm just going to go ahead and read this. It says, "And for this reason, do your utmost to add to your belief uprightness, to uprightness knowledge, to knowledge self-control, to self-control endurance, to endurance reverence, to reverence brotherly affection, and to brotherly affection love. For if these are in you and increase, they cause you to be neither inactive nor without fruit in the knowledge of our Master Yeshua Messiah. For he in whom these are not present is blind, being short-sighted, and has forgotten that he has been cleansed from his old sins. For this reason, brothers, all the more do your utmost to make firm your calling and choosing. For if you are doing these matters, you shall never stumble at all. For in this way, an entrance into the everlasting reign of our Master and Savior Yeshua Messiah shall be richly supplied to you. And so I intend to remind you of these matters again and again, and though you know them and have been established in the present truth. But I think it is right, as long as I am in this tent, to stir you up by a reminder, knowing that the putting off of my tent is soon, even as our Master Yeshua Messiah made clear to me. And I shall do my utmost also to see to it that you always have a reminder of these matters after my departure."
That's a good list to be able to also look at for a potential spouse. Do they exhibit these things? This is a good roadmap, plan, blueprint, like we've been talking about, to be able to look at and be like, okay, does this person exhibit these things?
Yeah. Peter is giving us a blueprint for building your faith, or building your relationship with the Messiah and with Elohim the Father. He does these things so that we're going to be fruitful and aware and strong and headed in the right direction. And he believes this wisdom to be so critical that he intends to remind us over and over again to apply this information that he's imparted. So our human relationships can also benefit from the repetition of important information. Usually we need to hear things more than once.
Yes.
When we communicate information to a potential spouse or a friend, we shouldn't be surprised if they don't immediately integrate that information or apply that information. Sometimes we're going to have to communicate it multiple times in a variety of ways. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't value you or they're not listening to you. We as humans, we tend to have what I would call a listening disorder that prevents us from fully understanding what someone else is trying to communicate. And usually it's because of distraction. We're thinking about other things and we're not focusing. So we as the ones who are communicating information, we have to have patience to give the information multiple times in multiple ways until the other person fully understands and is able to apply that information. But we also, there's a flip side to the coin. There are certainly instances when we communicate the information or wisdom to another person multiple times, and it always seems to fall on deaf ears.
Goes out the other side of the ear.
Yeah, I mean, and this is possibly an indicator of a person either being self-absorbed or vain or just a plain lack of interest.
Yeah.
In Matthew 7:6, I'm going to pull that up because I do have it bookmarked. It's just one verse. In Matthew 7:6, it says, "Do not give what is set apart to the dogs. Don't throw your pearls before the pigs, lest they trample them under their feet and turn and tear you in pieces." Yeah. So, don't, if someone just shows a plain lack of interest, or they're self-absorbed or they're vain, don't continue to throw your pearls before the pigs, because you deserve someone who is interested in you and your emotions, your ways, that is, your pearls.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you can tell that in the beginning of relationships. Is that person asking you questions about themselves and wanting to get to know you? Are they finding out information about your hobbies, your likes, your dislikes? How do you like to spend your free time, and getting to know you? Or are they distracted all the time when you call them, when you chit chat, when you text message? Does it take them days to get back to you? Well, maybe they're just not that interested. Maybe they are not wanting to pursue anything because for some reason there's just not that click. So it's a matter of, don't spend your time in a way with that person then, because they're just not that interested in you. So it's a matter of figuring out, okay, are they reaching out to you, or are you always reaching out to them?
Yeah.
Yep, that's good.
So now we're going to read some specific verses in chapter 35. I'm going to read 35:2 and 3.
Okay. "For 6 days work may be done, but on the seventh day you shall have a holy day, a Sabbath of complete rest to the Lord. Whoever does any work on it shall be put to death." And also 3?
And 3.
Okay. "You should not kindle a fire in any of your dwellings on the Sabbath day."
Okay, so I mean, that's one thing. I'm going to move on and read a few more later in the chapter. Verse 10. "And let all the wise-hearted among you come and make all that Yah has commanded." And then 25-26, it says, "And all the wise-hearted women spun yarn with their hands and brought what they had spun, the blue and the purple and the scarlet and the fine linen. And all the women whose hearts lifted them up in wisdom spun the goat's hair." So I just want to read these few verses because first it's talking about the Sabbath. And then it's talking about some work that was being done to construct. So what does this kind of come together and mean? When Moses begins to speak the words that Yah gave him on Mount Sinai concerning the contribution and the construction of the tabernacle, he begins with a reminder.
Yeah.
Just like, what we were talking about just a moment ago. He needed to communicate some very important information. In verse 2, it says that the work, or the malakah, is done for 6 days, but on the seventh day it shall be set apart, a kodesh to you. It's a Sabbath of rest, Shabbat Shabbaton. It's to Yah, it's Shabbat Shabbaton. Yeah. Anyone doing work on it is put to death. Now, the Sabbath instruction has been repeated several times in the book of Exodus already. In chapter 16, chapter 20, 23, 31, 34, and now in 35. So this is actually the 6th time that Yah has reminded Israel to rest on the Sabbath. Yeah. We didn't speak on this in our last video for Kitessa, but the reminder to rest on the Sabbath in chapter 34, verse 21, it emphasizes a piece of information that's relevant to this parshah's reminder as well. 34:21 says, 6 days you work, but on the seventh day you rest. In plowing time and in harvest you rest. This emphasizes that even at the busiest times of the year, plowing and harvesting, Yah expected his people to rest on the Sabbath, no exceptions. Yeah. So now in chapter 35, a very short time later, Yah repeats the Sabbath command again. But why? It's very important, and something's about to happen that they need to be reminded of this. Yeah. They're about to begin gathering and making the materials to contribute to building a house for Elohim in the camp. Yeah. This was an exciting time for Israel. Some would be zealous to see this project, to see it through to its completion, even choosing to work on it during the set-apart time of the Sabbath. So Yah reminds them before even giving the go-ahead to do the tabernacle project that they have to rest on the Sabbath, even during this exciting time of building a house for him. So it's a great example for us of the need for repetition of information. We know that an opportunity is coming up for our relationship to be damaged due to our partner's zealousness, or the fact that they've not yet fully integrated the information we gave them into their thoughts and behavior. So it's just calling for a heads up, a repeating of information. It allows the other person to see how a piece of information you gave them previously applies to an upcoming situation. We could call this preventative maintenance of a relationship. It's another part of what it means to shamar, to guard your relationships. And we've been talking about shamar a lot, but here we see it again. You need to guard that, and this is a part of it. We could say that Yah was doing some preventative maintenance of his newly renewed covenant relationship with Israel. Remember, in the last time they broke covenant with the golden calf, they had to renew covenant, and that was just in the previous chapter where the covenant was renewed. So it's like, okay, I've got to give them this information so they don't go ahead and break covenant again by trying to do something good.
Yeah. You always need to have that rest, no matter what it is if it's your full-time job, part-time job, whatever it might need, whatever it is, you need to go ahead and have that rest, and God put the Sabbath in there to go ahead and have that rest. And that's a good conversation to be able to have with a potential spouse is, how do you rest? What is it that you do? Do you sit down and listen to scripture for 8 hours a day? During that time, do you go for a walk outside? Do you go for a hike at all? Do you go for a drive? What are you going to do when you have kids? How are you going to prepare and do things for the kids so they're able to be entertained, but also to be able to enjoy their rest as well? Maybe they have special toys that they play with only on Shabbat. That's the only time that they get to play with those special toys versus playing with them the rest of the time. That can be something that is a set apart time for them to be able to go ahead and do. Or maybe they read a special book during that time. So it's a matter of needing to think, how are you going to prepare your family for the Shabbat to be able to have everybody participate in it? Here your wife is, she's working with the kids, 6 days a week. How is she going to go ahead and rest on that day? She also needs to rest as well. Moms need a rest. And a lot of times they don't get it even on Shabbat. So how are you going to go ahead and do that? Maybe you prepare some of the food on that day. Maybe it's a crock pot kind of meal, or maybe it's sandwiches or whatever it is. But that person, whoever is doing most of the work the other time, they also have to have a Sabbath rest as well.
Yeah, maybe dad takes the kids out for a walk or a hike while mom gets to sit at the house and just breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. There's certain things where it's like you have to sit down as a family and figure out, okay, how are we going to make this go ahead and work? What is it that is going to need to go ahead and get done so everybody is able to enjoy the Sabbath rest? It's so important because, as we see, God continues to repeat it, and he's not done. He continues to do it throughout the entire book.
He does.
The entire Bible course of life, he continues to talk about it. So it's important for us to be able to figure out, okay, what do we need to go ahead and do?
And he continues to repeat it because it tends to be the place where we tend to mess up a lot.
Yeah.
And it's a place where we need preventative maintenance.
Yeah.
Because what is the Shabbat? It is the sign of the covenant.
Yeah.
So, he continues to talk about it because he's like, you need to go ahead and make sure that you're doing this, right. And that you're honoring me, that you're honoring each other, and that you're getting out of the Sabbath what I intended for you to get out of it in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's true.
So, just to wrap that thought up, in our relationships, we also have to take the initiative from time to time to remind the other person about how previous information that we have given them applies to an upcoming or a current situation. Yep. This will help the other person to avoid the danger of damaging the relationship. On the other side of the coin, we have to listen and pay attention to the reminders or the hints that our partner gives to us. If we can truly shema, that is, to listen and respond appropriately, then we give our relationships the best chance for success.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're seeing just inside of this that to shamar, that is to guard, and to shema, to listen and respond appropriately, those are the keys to relationship success.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you're going to be the one doing the shamar and the other person has to shema.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going to be the one who, does the other. You know, but I mean, the key to it is one is speaking, the other is listening and responding appropriately.
Yeah. Yep. And it definitely is a give and take. It's not just one-sided.
It's not just
one-sided.
one-sided. You know, it's both your responsibilities to guard your relationship.
Yeah.
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 So we got some other things here in chapter 35 and 36.
The other part is, let's see, in verse, let me look and see here. So at the end of verse 30 through 35, then Moses said to the sons of Israel, "See, the Lord has called my name Bezalel, the son of Ur, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and he had filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom and understanding and in knowledge and in all craftsmanship, to make designs for working in gold and in silver and in bronze, in the cutting of stone, for setting, and in the carving of wood, so as to perform in every inventive work. He also has put in his heart to teach, both he and Aboliah, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan."
Fun names.
Yes. "He has filled them with skill to perform every work of an engraver and of a designer and of embroiderer in blue and in purple and in scarlet material and in fine linen and of a weaver as performers of every work, maker of design." So God gave wisdom to people to go ahead and design some of these things, just like God gives us different wisdom in design to be creative. You know, depending on what that creativity is, God gives us that wisdom. And how do we celebrate each other's skills? How are we uplifting to other people around us when they are using their skills? You know, when we see somebody who has made an awesome picture, you know, of an art or a craft. You know, my great grandma was a quilter. And so I never was into quilting until, I think it's been 20 some years now, you know, but I've made a couple quilts and I love quilting now. You know, it is very much so relaxing to me to be able to see it. So when I see quilts, I'm like, wow, look at how much work got put into that. Look at all that fabric and the design and how pretty it is in regards to it. So it's a matter of how do you celebrate your friends, your family, you know, around you in regards to their hobbies, their interests, the way that God has given them wisdom and possibly knowledge to be able to go ahead and use that creativity. You can see that in little kids when they start learning something new. It's like you want to celebrate every little part of that newness. So how are we doing that as an adults? You know, how are we celebrating the people around us in the things that they do? Yeah,
just acknowledging and recognizing that they're doing a great thing and a beautiful thing, and you appreciate, you know, what they're doing, and that it blesses you in some way. It goes a long way.
Yeah, it does. You know, it speaks to their love language, especially if it's words of affirmation, you know, or even just spending time with them in their craft and what they're doing to be creative. Yeah.
Chapter 36.
Yep.
I'm going to read verse 2 through 7. "And Moshe called Bezalel and Aholiab, and every wise-hearted man in whose heart Yah had given wisdom, everyone whose heart lifted him up to come and do the work. They received from Moshe all the contribution which the children of Israel had brought for the work of the service, making the set-apart place. But they still brought to him voluntary offerings every morning. So all the craftsmen who were doing all the work of the set-apart place came, each from the work he was doing, and they spoke to Moshe, saying, 'The people bring much more than enough for the service of the work which Yah commanded us to do.' Then Moshe commanded, and they sent this word throughout the camp, saying, 'Let neither man nor woman do any more work for the contribution of the set-apart place.' And the people were withheld from bringing, for what they had was enough for all the work to be done, more than enough."
Yeah.
So obviously, there's a point in here where we see it's a beautiful picture of Israel's willingness and desire to participate in building the house for Elohim. It's also something that all pastors and leaders, when they read this, they say, we would love to be able to say the words, we have enough to do all the work. There is, however, another important unspoken lesson in this passage.
Yeah.
What about the people who had not given yet?
Yeah.
More than likely, there were some of the congregation of Israel who were on the fence about contributing to the project. They were thinking maybe they didn't have enough to spare, or that the amount of material that they could give, it wasn't enough to really matter. Yeah. They may have had multiple other reasons, but the point is that while they thought about and deliberated these matters, the rest of the people did give, and they continued to give until Moshe had to command them to stop giving. Yeah. So regardless of whether or not it was in their heart to give, the opportunity to give was now over. Every time they would see the tabernacle, they would be reminded of their missed opportunity to be a part of building a house for their Elohim. So very sad just in that, particular time frame, if you think about that and if you draw that kind of a lesson out from it, it's unspoken. Yeah. But how can we, connect this to our relationships? Well, the thing is don't let opportunities pass you by. Yeah. If you have an opportunity to connect with a person, don't let it just slide by. If you see a person that could be a match for you, go talk to them. Yeah. Ask them questions, listen to their answers, answer their questions if it's appropriate, the appropriate questions they're asking. Yeah. You've got to do your part. It could be that while, you see a certain person and you're thinking, maybe I should go do something. And then you're sitting back and deliberating, how should I do it? Well, in that time, someone else has also seen that person and they've gone up and they've gone ahead and done it. Yeah. And now that person you were thinking about is now in a relationship, so that opportunity's passed. Yeah. So, the driving thing that we would call you to is that you have to do your part, let Yah do his. And don't let opportunities pass you by. Yeah,
that's why we create events. That's why we have a website, is to be able to have that opportunity for people to be able to come together. We have different retreats throughout the year to be able to bring people together so they can have that community fellowship, but also to be able to have the opportunity to meet somebody that they might not be able to, and that's why we go to different events. That's why we go to a certain Sukkot. That's why we, Hebrew is representative, at other conferences, is because we want to go ahead and, for one, have a presence there, but also to create that opportunity for people to be able to meet each other. So don't just sit back and be like, I don't want to go, or I'm not going to meet anybody. You never know where you could possibly meet somebody. Some great friendships have come from getting together at these different meeting places, and we are creating that environment for you to be able to come. So we want to connect with you. We want to be able to make that connection amongst other people as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And Sarah has another point about, going in kind of a different direction in the verses that we just read. And it's another great lesson out of this, the people bringing more than enough.
Yeah. Are you making yourself sick by doing too much? Are you giving so much of yourself that you are not making time for either your spouse that you have a relationship with because you're always busy? Or are you a single person and you're like, I have all the time in the world. I can do something 7 days a week. Well, what about that potential person who's coming into your life? Are you making space for them? Mm-hmm. Are you allowing time to be able to have fellowship with them, to be able to have that conversation with them? Are you so busy that they're like, you're so busy, you don't have time for a relationship with me? What does that look like from an outsider looking in? Do you not have enough space, for that person to be able to come into your life? Yes, it's good to be busy. Yes, it's good to be busy doing God's work of what he wants you to do. But are you creating it where, one, your health is going down the hill? Another thing where you are not fulfilling other responsibilities that you need to go ahead and do amongst your family, amongst your community family as well. There's lots of different things that you can take from that of, are you just getting overwhelmed? You have to have that balance in your life. And sometimes it's a weekly thing that you have to figure out my balance. Okay, I can't go here because if I do that, I'm going to create this problem later down the road. And so it's a matter of, in a way, picking and choosing, but also figuring out, be like, okay, God, I know you want me to do this, but I'm exhausted. Well, if you're exhausted, maybe you shouldn't be doing it. You have to have some self-care as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, we've also got chapters 37 through 38. And these chapters record the way that Israel followed the blueprint, the way they followed the instructions of Yah in constructing the furnishings of his house and the courtyard of his house. Yeah. We do get a little additional information. Remember, we were talking a little bit about, as there's a repetition of information, sometimes there's that little thing that there's a little extra something. So we do get a little repetition of information in chapter 38, verse 8. Would you like to read that, 38:8?
38:8, yes. Moreover, he made the laver of bronze with its base of bronze from the mirror of the serving women who served at the doorway of the tent of meeting.
So this wasn't told to us before. It was told to us that they were going to make a laver, but we didn't get this information. Yeah. So this additional information says that it was constructed using the bronze mirrors of the women who assembled at the door of the tent of appointment. It's just another example of new information during the repetition of the instructions. Now, there's a lot of commentary on these bronze mirrors and why they were used. In short, to just kind of give you a condensed version of all the commentary, the mirrors were used in Egypt to strengthen the relationship between husbands and wives, to ensure that the couples continue to procreate in the midst of the hardship of slavery. But now these mirrors will be used to construct a vessel that would be used in the future to strengthen and restore a broken relationship between husband and wife in the case of suspected adultery. You can find that in Numbers 5:11 through 31. The water for this ceremony would have been taken from the bronze laver that was constructed from these mirrors that in the past were used to strengthen relationship in Egypt. Yeah. So how can we take this little extra piece of information and use it in our relationships today? There's probably things that either husband or wife possesses that was instrumental in creating or strengthening your marriage relationship in the past. Maybe that thing that you possess is still useful for your relationship, but it could also be used to help future generations to also have strong and successful relationships. So that's the present and the future. Yeah. The possession could take many forms. Maybe it's information that you pass on to your children, but also to all the future children of Israel. The thing that we're trying to kind of drive at here is we need to consider the ways that you and your spouse can use the things that you have to impact the future generations of Israel. Yeah. How you can use your past and your presence to make a difference, not only for your children, but for all the future children of Israel. Yeah. That may be passing on information. It may be using some possessions that you don't really use as much anymore that can help the people in the future. But we need to dwell in all three time zones. Yeah. And we have to have balance in that as well. Yes.
That is true. One of the things we have as just an example or something to be able to look at and to be able to remind us, of what we have as a married couple is our little, we have a little salt covenant kind of thing here. And, this reminds us of our relationship, of our covenant that we did, when we got married. And so this is something that we have out at our house to be able to remind us monthly, that, and also yearly, that we made a covenant, a covenant in marriage, a covenant, a commitment to each other.
A covenant of salt. You can kind of see here, we did use different kinds of sand. Mine was the black, Sarah's was the red. Yeah. The idea of that salt covenant is if we could actually manage to separate all these little pieces of salt, then we would be able to dissolve our marriage. So if we can't do that, then we need to figure out a way to work it out.
Yes, and so this is something that our kids can go ahead and look at and be like, okay, mom and dad are committed to each other. Yep. This is an example of something that they can go ahead and see and be like, okay, mom and dad are committed to each other. and hopefully later down the road, it can be, grandma and grandpa are committed to each other, because it's something that's able to go ahead and be seen, in our home for future generations, and maybe when we're gone, maybe one of our kids gets it, and they're like, well, this is our commitment to each other now, so it's something that is able to go ahead and get passed down, or to be able to go ahead and be seen, by others, as just a commitment.
Yeah. So, I mean, just figure out ways that you can use the things that you have, whether they're material, this is a material possession, or your information. We can use the material as well as information to bless not only our children, our grandchildren, future generations, but we can also do something like we're doing right now and use it in such a way as to try and go beyond out to the community and, pass that information on so that people can understand. And have things like these, which are the reminders. Yeah.
And that's why we have these videos as well, as reminders, as advice, as information, for future people to be able to go ahead and use and go back to and be like, oh yeah, I remember listening to them, or, oh yeah, that is great advice. There's definitely people that I remember listening to years ago that still speak volumes to me. So it's a matter of just having that information, and how is that going to be used down the road?
Well, studying Parsha Vayakahal through the lens of relationship, it's provided us with a great deal of information, more than we probably would have thought from reading these in the past. But, some of it we've heard before, some we've received for the first time in these chapters. The overall theme has taught us about the importance of giving wisdom or information multiple times in multiple ways, because sometimes that information is so critical to our relationships, it has to be repeated again and again to ensure that our relationship partner both understands and is able to apply this wisdom in crucial circumstances. This is one way to practice both guarding and paying attention to shamar and shema in our relationships. We shamar by sharing critical information, and we shema by paying attention to what our partner shares and responding appropriately. We also discuss the importance of taking advantage of relationship opportunities, doing our part, trusting Yah to do his part. We looked at an extra detail given in the repetition of information, so that we can use our past and our present to impact the future generations of Israel. We talked about the importance of affirming the people who are doing good works around us, and the importance of making sure that we have balance in our lives and not burning ourselves out, even though we're trying to do a good work. All these lessons and more are, right here inside of this parsha, and we just, we continue to encourage you to mine the depths of his word, to follow the blueprint, the pattern he's given us, to establish, to maintain, to grow successful relationships.
Yeah. And remember, the Torah portions that we are going through is through the lens of relationships. We're not looking at our goal, of what God has called us to go ahead and do, is doing it a little bit differently than other teachers that are out there. And so just remember that when you are studying some of this is through the lens of relationships. We are not going to pick out every little thing, because you can get that from other teachers. We get that from other teachers. We love the teachers that we listen to on a weekly basis, and even sometimes a daily basis, because they feed us in a different way. We're feeding you all through the lens of relationships. So just remember that when we are going through some of this, the Torah portions, it is through the lens of relationships, and that is relationships with each other, husband and wife, the fellow humans. I continue to say that, but it's the humans around us, it's the people around us that we have we have a relationship with them, or they're just regular people, people that we just run into. We need to go ahead and be kind and show Yeshua's love to everybody around us. And so just remember that as we continue to study this. And so we're grateful you guys continue to tune in and continue to come back. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. And of course, you can also find us on Facebook and on Instagram as well. And of course, we also have the dating website too, HebrewShebrew.com, for all the singles that are out there. If you are looking for a spouse, we want you to come join us, because we have some great members that are on it that are also looking for their spouse as well. So I hope you guys have a great day, and we'll see you later.
Shalom and Shamar v'Shema.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.